Nobody booked a meeting because the email was pretty, but plenty of meetings have been booked via a one-line email with spelling mistakes. And no, it doesn't mean you should start making spelling mistakes on your emails on purpose. But if you're focusing on sending attractive looking emails with fancy graphics and carefully formatted text, but you're not including the specific elements that lead to meetings booked, then you're completely wasting your time. Templates look great on paper and in the words of people trying to push them. But as an ex-Salesforce account executive, I can assure you, no template is going to save you your cold email strategy if you don't understand what you are doing. Let me explain why. The first thing we have to understand is that why beautiful emails suck. The first reason is because of procrastination. You see, many sales reps put hours and hours of time into crafting these perfect emails that hit every principle they've learned on some LinkedIn article that they read. And honestly, I fell victim of this trap many times in my career. Why? Because I was simply afraid to do the outreach, to get the rejection, to get in front of buyers. So I would spend time and time just crafting the little perfect CTA with the little perfect introduction and making my emails as immaculate and as beautiful as possible. And this is a common trap that most salespeople fall into as well. And why is it? Is it because they love email so much? No, in many cases, it's occurring because of procrastination. You're either afraid of facing the tough monster of rejection, right? The tough monster of rejection here, or just the hard worker of having to just write some good emails and send them out. For me, it was personally a rejection thing. I didn't want to be rejected when I first got started in sales, and that led me on a rabbit hole of procrastination. So if you are out there crafting, trying to put the perfect email together, understand the perfect email doesn't exist. And in your efforts of perfectly trying to, construct the perfect email, you're really just wasting time, and what you're essentially doing is procrastinating. So first order of business, stop procrastinating. What we need to understand is that we need good emails, but we don't need perfect emails, because good is good enough, okay? You need to understand the 80-20 rule. 20% of the effort give you 80% of the results. So stop trying to craft the perfect email. It doesn't exist. A good email will get the job done. Second order of business is lack of real value. You see, when you have to make such a perfect email and you have to craft the perfect subject line, is because you don't have confidence in the value that you offer. Let's look at an extreme example. Let's say you were offering people, free $10,000 gift cards, right? How perfect would your emails have to be? Assuming, you legitimately have the $10,000, how perfect would your emails have to be? Not even perfect at all. You could just send seven words. I have $10,000. Here's the real proof signed by the government, or however you can prove it. When do you want me to send it to you? It has to be like super simple, super straightforward email. Why? Because you have the real value. So in this case, you have to ask yourself, what is the value that I bring to my customers, to my ideal customer profile? What are the problems, significant problems that my product or service can solve for them that they would be crazy not to take a meeting with me? And think to yourself, what is the level of problems that I've solved for customers in the past? What is the value that I brought to organizations in the past? And document it for yourself, first of all, so you can have it in your psyche, so you understand that you actually deliver value to your clients, but also as evidence for the people that you're going to be reaching out to. Why? Because when you send these emails, after you ask yourself what value you truly deliver, then you can include it in your cold email, right? In a concise, direct manner. Ultimately, value, right? When we look at value, right? And we had to put value because, value is a vague term, like deliver value. You always hear that on random posts and stuff, but what the heck does that even mean? Let's put value into a simple equation. This is how I think of it. It has worked for me. Value is simply problem solving. What problems do you solve? Once you understand this, then communicate what problems you solve to your buyers. And boom, just like that, you've delivered value. Next order of business. We have to understand a very important distinction in emails. And I see this all the time with our students at the Selling Made Simple Academy, and it's the distinction between marketing versus sales emails. Is a big difference. Now, I don't want to further exacerbate, the battle between marketing and sales. I love my marketing people. I'm a marketer myself to some degree, right? But we have to make a distinction. We have to draw a line in the sand between these two, because they are not the same. Now, for marketing emails, you might want to lead more in the area of perfection with my horrible handwriting here. But with sales emails, this is just not the case. Marketing emails tend to be long and drawn out, kind of like watching a long a movie from your favorite movie director, right? Versus sales emails is almost like a TikTok short, right? It needs to be short, concise, value dense, and direct. These are going to a wide audience of people, typically in marketing, and sales is typically more personalized. We're directing our email specifically to this specific person within this specific company that we want to talk to, because we feel that setting up a meeting with that person will be a win-win for the both of us. So we have to make a clear distinction between marketing and sales email. So don't be afraid to make your sales emails a bit uglier, a bit less perfect. Why? Because they don't need to be. Remember, they need to be good, not here perfect. We don't need perfection, we need good. Which brings us to our next point of why do ugly emails perform? Number one reason is better deliverability. And let me tell you a quick story about this. When I first got started in my first role in sales, right? I was all buttoned up, right? I was all stiff. I was ready to be super professional. And I was ready to, generate some sales. So I started, learning about sales, and I said, you know what? I'm sending out emails. It's working out okay. One of the things that I could do, I thought to myself, my beginner mind was like, you know what? I'm going to make my email signature very beautiful and very professional, right? So I spent all this time faffing around, as Will would say, working on my email signature. And I remember, on my email signature, I included a nice professional picture of myself with a tie. I included my name. I included a little link to my number, another link to my LinkedIn, and I had a bunch of other links to other social medias. I even have my company website there, like 3 links, multiple images, just horrible. Now, why was this horrible? I'll get to that in a second. But when I started implementing, my new sales cadence with my new fancy email signature that I thought was going to bring me all the meetings in the world, I'm like, it's working out a little bit, not as good as I thought, but let me give it more time. Then I remember around 3-4 weeks went by, and my booking rate literally fell through the floor, and my manager actually had to have a meeting with me. And I thought to myself, why am I not booking meetings anymore? I've been sending the emails just like before. It was working. I have a new fancy email signature. What's going on? Then I realized my deliverability had gone through the floor. Why? Because I had all these images, I had all these links, and I don't know if you know this, but email providers like Google or Microsoft, if you haven't had contact with a person before and you're sending them an email for the first time, and you have a bunch of links and images in that email, it's automatically categorized. Well, not automatically in all cases, but often it goes to spam. So please avoid this. If you haven't sent any emails to somebody before and you're doing cold outreach, avoid links, avoid images, avoid trying to make your email so perfect. Next thing we have to understand is with ugly emails, we have better communication. And look, when I say ugly emails, we basically mean straightforward emails that are not faffing around. You're not including a bunch of unnecessary details, unnecessary links. They're just short, ugly, and straight to the point. That's what I mean by ugly emails. And when we communicate like this in business, we have better communication, right? And why is that? When we try to make our emails too complex, too many images, too much information, 3 paragraphs of information, multiple links, and we try to make them overcomplicated and beautiful, what happens is in the line of communication from the seller to the buyer, right? And we're sending this email, right, from point A to point B, by a seller to buyer. With each layer of complexity we add to our email, links, multiple paragraphs, too much information, we are literally building barriers from us to our buyers that are preventing us from having effective communication. You see, in life, you can afford to faff around and small talk, and that typically tends to be helpful in social interactions. But when it comes to business, when it comes to sales, you want to be as direct as possible. Look, qualified buyers don't have time to mess around. They mean business, and they want you to communicate directly, effectively, and concisely. This is the power of ugly emails. Better communication because of simplification, and we're speaking straight to the problem, straight to the desires, and we're delivering the value straightforward. Another thing that ugly emails help us with is that it makes us less salesy, which is what we want. Remember, we don't want to trigger the salesman alarm, right? We want to stay away from the red salesman alarm, okay? Why? Because we talked about how being too salesy can, create this boundary between us and our buyers, right? And we call this a defense boundary, right? Let's put a D here for defense. Why? Because people have an automatic, response, like a reflex towards salespeople, that whenever a salesperson comes towards us, we automatically say, no, I'm just looking. We deflect it. We ignore the emails. We send it to spam. So we want to be less salesy. This is a good thing. But what's the issue? When we send these perfect emails with tons of lines, tons of links, and tons of images, you are just coming across as a salesperson. On the other hand, with our short, concise, straightforward emails that we call more ugly emails, they just seem like an email that a colleague sent you. They're straightforward. It's not perfect. Your English teacher probably wouldn't be proud of it. It's just a concise, direct email that almost feels like a note from a friend, right? From a colleague, think of as an internal email sent internally within a company. Are they going to be perfect? Are they going to be 6 paragraphs? Are they going to have a bunch of links and stuff? No, they won't. It's just a simple note from a colleague internally. And that's how you want your emails to look. So instead of making our perfect little emails, what should we be focusing on instead? Primary thing we have to focus on is the right message for the right person at the right time. And I call this the perfect trifecta for cold email. And this is what we want to nail. Because when we're able to nail these 3 things, right, then we get this perfect, the perfect zone, right? And when we get into the zone, it's really easy to book meetings. So the right message is the right, type of message that would deliver the most value to your ideal customer profile. You're sending it to the right person within the organization that has buying potential and has actually the ability to make a purchasing decision. And you're sending it at the right timing. You're monitoring their activity within their company. You're monitoring trigger events. Obviously, the timing is the hardest one out of these 3, but you simply do your best to nail the timing as well. And when you are able to check off these 3 things, the big 3, then this is when meetings happen. So these are the 3 things we have to be focusing on, right? Instead of trying to make our emails perfect, we have to try to make these 3 as best and as perfect as we can without being a perfectionist. Next is that we have to understand our value proposition. What is your value proposition? Like we spoke about earlier, you need to deliver value. So you need to not only think about what value you can deliver, but you also have to try to write it down so you have it crystal clear. So when you're doing outreach, you have a very clear depiction of the value that you bring to people. Just as an example, our value proposition is that we help your team find and close more deals in the next 30 days or your money back, and Will himself will personally pay you an extra $1,000 for wasting your damn time. That's a good value proposition. So look, I'm not saying you have to copy this exactly, but you have to craft your own value proposition in your sales outreach. And the key is to make it as irresistible as possible. And last but not least, send the emails. Another thing we fall into, perfectionism, right? When trying to craft the perfect email is that we never actually send them. It's like we've been working this perfect little science experiment, and it's like our little baby and we're afraid to let it go into the world. And if you don't let it go, then you're not going to set up meetings. If you don't set up meetings, you're not going to make money. So send the emails. They don't have to be perfect. Remember, they just have to be good. And if this was able to help you with your cold email, why not watch the video on the screen right now?